Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq. Joining me at the market site in Times Square, New York City, we have Matt Wiener, managing director at Aon. We're going to take a look at M&A, the current environment that we're seeing in 2022. And Matt, one thing is for sure, it looks very different than it did in 2020 and 2021, that's for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I think last year was a very unique year for all of us in the M&A practice. We saw volumes that went well beyond anything that we were accustomed to seeing. We saw very quick auction processes, which are a bit different. And as we've moved into 2022, while there's certainly been busy activity, it's not anywhere close to the levels that we saw last year.
What are some of the trends that you're seeing?
Yeah, so we're continuing to see clients focusing on high quality assets. Last year we certainly saw significant amounts of activity that involved high quality businesses, high quality assets, and that led to a run on the M&A activity that we continue to see kind of building through Q1. We saw a bit of a slowdown over the last probably 60 days or so, but I'd say the focus continues to be on those high quality assets. We're also starting to see a trend among buyers looking at unique alternative transaction structures. So outside of what I would call traditional M&A with acquiring companies and businesses, we're also seeing folks focus on a minority investment structure as well as secondary transactions that are led by private equity sponsors.
We'll get to that in just a moment, but why do you think we're seeing this downward trend? Is it largely due to macro conditions or waiting for this valuation reset to play itself out?
I think that's right. I mean, I think folks will tell you, certainly the conflict in Ukraine has provided headwinds. Rising interest rates and inflation in the US have done so as well. We also, we did see so much high quality assets in the market last year that I think there's been a bit of a reset by buyers who are now looking to make sure that if they are going to be involved in merger and acquisition activity, that the assets fit their portfolio. And so we continue to see most of the activity being driven by private equity sponsors. Right. Last year, there was certainly an uptick by strategics and corporates in the M&A space. We've seen that fall off a bit this year. We've heard some of that may be due to access to capital from the strategic side and just waiting on the sidelines for things to settle down before they go look to add to their portfolio.
When do you expect it to uptick at all? I mean, to my point earlier, valuations are looking much more attractive than they had before, and there are some good companies out there that are just kind of taking a hit because the market's taking a hit.
Yeah, we think this is going to look a lot like a pre-COVID year. So, COVID kind of reset the M&A timeline where for 6 months there was very little activity while folks tried to wrap their heads around what's going to be the impact on COVID to these businesses. We came out of COVID in the fourth quarter of 2020 and saw that M&A spike that continued through 2021. In a typical kind of pre-COVID year, we tend to see the first 6 months being kind of up and down, with there being a surge usually after Labor Day. So the last kind of 4 to 5 months of the year, there's always a surge. And from what we're seeing from our clients, the advisors that we work with, we expect that to be the trend this year. So we expect that third to kind of fourth quarter trend to approximate what we've seen in the past.
Are there any sectors that you think are going to specifically see an uptick?
Yeah, so we're already seeing a huge uptick in energy and infrastructure. I mean, not surprisingly with the price of commodities, that certainly has been a big driving factor. There's also a lot of private equity capital that's been raised to invest in infrastructure, so that continues to be a sector that we see a lot of interest in. Healthcare has also become fairly busy this year, as has technology and industrials.
And you had mentioned before alternative transaction structures. Explain to us a little bit more what that is, how it is different than traditional M&A.
Yeah, so I think it falls within kind of the purview of M&A, but I think when most people think of M&A, they think about someone acquiring a complete portfolio of assets or a business. And so we have seen a big influx of capital making minority investments, so strategic investments into companies where perhaps a buyer will grow its position, but it wants to kind of step toe into a smaller minority or even preferred equity position. And then on the private equity side, we've seen a huge influx of what we call kind of sponsor-led secondary transactions. So these are transactions where the sponsor's not ready to sell the company outright, but they want to provide an exit or liquidity event for old investors, and so they are effectively doing a secondary transaction where new investors are replacing the old investor capital, but the general partner of the sponsor is maintaining its interest, and that has become a huge trend over the last 18 months. We're continuing to see private equity funds raising new funds specifically for this strategy, and so we expect that to be a continuing trend looking forward.
Is there an advantage to using that particular strategy? Is it something new?
I don't think it's new, but I think, again, that you had a lot of sponsors that said, we've got an older fund that we're ready to kind of wind down and allow our investors to go away and move on. And there's crown jewel assets in that portfolio that they're not quite ready to sell because they believe there's still a lot of meat on the bone for that company to grow. So it's become a strategy for sponsors to keep those crown jewels and grow them a bit more. And there's now ample liquidity in the market to help supplant the old investors with the new capital.
All right, Matt, we appreciate the insight. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.
Thank you.